If you could talk a little bit about the L RFEs as well, and then the F, that would be great. So let's start with the L. What is the best way to respond to an RFE on an L visa?
So Ls are generally very labor extensive. A lot of documentation, a lot of information has to go in there. Again, depending on what the RFE is about. If it is as simple as like, oh, we are not sure that there is a qualifying relationship between the two entities, then you just give them the share certificates, like which
Mm.
shows that one entity owns the other, and that's a very simple RFE to respond. Right, one document and it was missed earlier somehow. Okay, here it is. Or if you had attached anyway and they missed somehow to look at it, then you just refer to that. The most extensive RFEs that we see generally in L context is basically that the position abroad was, if it's a new L petition, then you first time you're filing it, then they, because you're not in US, they cannot come back and like ask for more documentarily proof of the US role because you're not really here at this point. So you heavily rely on your current role outside the US to show this is what this person is currently doing and this is what they're going to do in the US as well. So generally what is problematic with LRFEs is that you already submit so much, and then if they come back and say this is not enough, sometimes it's mind boggling to think, what do I do now? What do I give them to convince? There are different strategies to deal with it depending on what the role is, what more you can show. I generally work in a way where, if I have, say, 100 documents, I give them 90 in the first petition. I keep like few, documents which are going to be helpful if there is an RF. And that generally works because then you give them those 10 additional documents and they're happy. Oh wow, we got more information, and those documents are not like just random low value, right? Those are the documents which are going to add value to your profile. So it again depends on, this, you as an attorney, I look at it, the case, and I prepare it in advance in the sense like what the strategy is going to be, how I'm going to present, because some cases are challenging and you expect an RFE on those cases because if it's USCIS is still in that traditional work culture. They don't understand the hybrid models. They don't understand hybrid matrix, how the teams work across continents or remotely, or how the reporting structure works in this date. So it becomes a little difficult for them to understand. So we plan it accordingly, and we always keep, some things which are going to be helpful if an RFE comes. Your focus has to be on explaining as much as possible. And then, going back to your petition because you don't want it to be a mess. You don't want it to be all over the place. You cannot really go back, and it's not a good idea to add more in terms of which you can't tie up with what you have already done.
Already submitted.
Always, you can't just keep on introducing new things because that's not good. So it's again planning first how you want to present the case, and then if you're giving more, how it ties up with what you have already given. So if I have said that somebody is a delivery manager and he does like 50% of time delivery management, and I've given them like 4 headings: delivery management, resource management, this, that. If I have a new evidence, I'm going to go back and tie up to those particular headings and show more additional evidence towards the role. So that's, and the other thing I do is like I generally deep dive into their duties, like bullet points that we give, and then correspond it with a piece of evidence. Like, so if I'm saying that he delegates work, so I give them
how
showing, hey, look, here he assigned work to his subordinate team. If I'm saying that he's responsible for their performance appraisal, then I'm like, hey, look, here he did, this is the system in their company. He has done performance.
This brings back a lot of memories, because for me, I remember like pulling out all the emails where I was assigning tasks, like taking screenshots of all of the performance reviews that happened. So no, definitely hear you on that. And so interesting when you said that 90% of the application you actually submit and only 10% for RFE. I wish we knew each other earlier, because I think for me, I think the strategy initially that whoever I was working with was to submit very bare minimum information so that we always get an RFE, and then you don't have to respond as much as in detail. However, we ended up, because I remember building those org charts and writing out multiple pages of documents.
So my strategy always has been give them enough that they are willing to approve it.
Prove it.
And it works 99% of the times.
Yeah.
because they are convinced. There is 1% chance, I barely have received RFEs on ALPS, like
Okay.
very, because I do it like I'm giving you enough that you don't have a reason to deny it.
To
100% there is not going to be a denial, but there is enough that satisfies you. But if there is an officer who is like, nope, I'm not satisfied, then okay, here it is more. And that kind of cements it and you get an approval. But whether you submit 10% or 90%, the problem is when you get an RFE, you have to do that much work
correct.
anyway, because that's your only chance at that point. After that, if it is not
Mm,
convinced, then you're going to get a denial. So
deny.
but I prefer doing it, do a good job in the beginning and then have a backup to respond to the RFE as well. So
That's
generally that works.
super helpful. And for everyone who's, if you're still watching and you're getting value out of it, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Sonal is taking time out of her very busy schedule to answer these questions. Appreciate you, Sonal.